energy and dynamism in the field of healthcare, technology, and as we will see in this session, in the legal arena as well. My name is Arogya Sengupta, and I'm the Research Director at Vidhi Center for Legal Policy, and I thank the organizers from the National Health Authority for asking me to be the moderator of this really interesting session, which is on the privacy and security aspects of the national digital health ecosystem. Without any further ado, I'll just quickly introduce the chair, co-chair, and the panelists, and we've got a really stellar lineup of people who are going to discuss this issue, which is at a nascent stage today in India. How do we ensure that aspects of privacy and security are core to the design of the national digital health ecosystem? What has been done so far, and what needs to be done in order to ensure that this is not something that is seen as regulation or compliance, but this is seen as necessity in part of the design. So I'm delighted that we have Mr. Satyanarayana as the chair of the session. Everyone in this room will know him. He was also most recently heading a committee that developed the National Digital Health Blueprint. So thank you very much, Mr. Satyanarayana. Dr. R.S. Sharma requires no introduction. He's the co-chair for this session, but really the heart and soul of the National Health Authority on all areas. So thank you very much, Dr. Sharma. And we've got a really stellar panel. Abhishek Singh, who heads the National E-Governance Division at the Ministry of Electronics and IT, is doing pioneering work in the field. Dr. Gulshan Rai, everyone in this area knows of Dr. Rai. I knew him from the time I was a student of law, one of the foremost cybersecurity experts in the country. Rama Vedashri, the CEO of the Data Security Council of India. Rama and I were together on the Justice Sri Krishna panel on formulating a data protection law for India, and Rama's insights, particularly in relation to how industry can play a critical part in making sure that privacy and security are part of the ecosystem, will be particularly valuable. And my senior from National Law School, Rahul Manthan, who's a partner at Trilegal, and as I say, the first tech lawyer that India has. So thank you very much, Rahul, for being a part of this session. I'll dive straight in. Mr. Satyanarayana, sir, if you could give us an overview of privacy and security aspects as you've seen them, both while developing the National Digital Health Blueprint as well as generally in the digital health ecosystem. I think that will set the stage for everyone else to follow. Please, sir.
Thank you, Arogya, and my greetings to all the fellow panelists and all the participants, both present here and online. Really, it's nostalgic for me. I can't but get a bit sentimental about this event, because what you see on the right side, 4 years of PMJ, I was from day one, I was the advisor with NHA, the critical initial period. And also, I chaired, as Arogya has mentioned, I chaired the committee on NDHM, which is now called Abdm, launched 1 year ago. So my compliments to the entire NHA team, represented, of course, fortunately on the dais by R.S. Sharma, for this singular achievement, because countries have taken decades to reach this kind of a stage, and we are, fast-tracking the whole thing through such a brilliant work. Compliments to the entire NHA team. I must say that initially, a word about, before we get into security and privacy and deeper stuff, I can't but be nostalgic, as I mentioned before, that we had a very tight time frame of 100 days to launch PMJ 4 years ago. Almost worked day and night with the then Secretary Preeti Sudan and Dr. Vindu Bhushan. 100 days sprint it was. Some of the people who are sitting in the audience also worked at that time in such a passion. So we had to put the platform together, we had to get the security, privacy policies, procedures, everything in place, and also the capacity building in all the states. So it's really happy that I was sitting through the previous session, and the kind of numbers that have been achieved in this short time, 23 crore plus ABA numbers issued in the last 1 year which is small work. So, and likewise, other numbers are also on the increase. So, let me compliment on behalf of NHA again, Sharma ji, on this great achievement. I hope that it will be really continuing, the same pace and direction. Now, coming back to the question before us in this session, which is security and privacy. Why are we kind of so much concerned, or why should we be so much concerned about these two words? So I will quote one of my predecessors, in fact, predecessors to both me and R.S. Sharma ji here, Mr. Chandrasekhar, who wrote in a recent article published in the Economic Times, which says that, the digital is global. He said something very interesting. Digital is global and regulation is local. So there is a lot of in-depth meaning in this, that the technologies move so very fast and so unpredictable manner, and regulations are generally, tardy. We have seen the bills and regulations, how long it takes to push a single bill to its ultimate logical conclusion. So there is a kind of a situation where we have to produce results on the ground and balance the need for development with the security and the privacy. So it's a very delicate balance, difficult balance that needs to the country. And in a country of the size of India, 1.3 billion as its population, it becomes all the more, and the kind of diversity of people that we have, the languages that we have, and economic stratifications that we have, really extremely complex situation. So that's the reason we need to be wary of these two things. If not handled properly, I think it could really be counter, to the whole program at some point. So let me, having said that, what have we done? I'm just putting my mind back by 4 years when we're doing the, either the drafting of that NDHP, as a chair of that committee, what went into these aspects. I just would like to, because looking back always gives us that kind of how much of that aspiration have we really satisfied in, or in the process of, complying with those aspirations. So if we see the mission of the National Digital Health Mission, or ABDM now, the mission statement itself is, hard-coded. It has hard-coded the two words security and privacy. I'm just reading one line which says that the mission is to provide wide range of digital services while ensuring security, confidentiality and privacy. This is the mission of ABDM itself. So the message is loud and clear that these are the keywords on which we are going to work throughout. Whether it is technology, whether it is the legal aspect, regulation aspect, etc. These are the keywords. Now, if you look at the NDHP document again, it was a very sensitive work we had to do, and do the balancing act also in every page and every chapter of the report. I'm just quoting 4 principles which bear upon security and privacy from out of this report, which is, one of the principles says that security by design and privacy by design in all the building blocks. The National Digital Health Blueprint is in terms of about 30 plus building blocks. And one of the fundamental principles is that each and every building block shall be designed from day one. It's not that it's retrofitted. Security and privacy can be retrofitted, but it will be very messy and with a lot of loopholes through which, a lot of breaches can happen. So by design is one of the principles, security and privacy by design. Second thing in that direction is the federated architecture, which means decentralization, autonomous organizations coming together and operating in a federal structure, both organizationally as well as technological federalism, is one of the founding principles of NDHB or ABDM. Third is minimalistic approach. Don't collect so much data that you don't need to use immediately. This is the tendency, that in future it may be required, so let me collect as much data as possible. No. The principle is be minimalistic in terms of your footprint, in terms of data collection and its processing. And the third, and which is the most important one, in fact, I think we have heard one of the very important points made from the audience in the previous session, which is the tipping point that the gentleman has mentioned across the countries, where the citizen feels the need, and citizen knocks at the door of the digital doors, his expectations. So one of the principles, therefore, in the report was also this, that it should be citizen-centric and also driven by the citizen in control of the situation. So these are some of the elements that, in addition, we have a number of technical recommendations in the report which buttress these principles. I'm not going to go into details of those things. But, one key thing we had recommended also was about the NDHM sandbox, which was also to validate and test all the new solutions, technological solutions to the health issues. So I'm very glad that, a number of almost about 100 such solutions have been certified already by NHA in the course of the last. It was launched, sandbox, I remember sometime in 2020, and in these 2 years, almost 100 plus solutions have been certified. See, it is the convergence. What does certification mean? It's not one more bureaucracy that we're talking about, one more level of bureaucracy, but this enables the solutions to converge towards the standards and expectations and principles set by ABDM. Now, the other side of the coin is the legal aspect. We didn't have a law to go by. This was really troubling us so much in the committee, and we had so many debates on this, that even to this day, there is no overarching data protection law in the country. So what do we do? Should we stop all the work? And there was suggestion to that effect, that drop NDHB when we put it for public comments also. Drop it like a hard brick, you don't have a law. So we had this discussion, but then we came up with a via media solution, which is to go through a policy route. In fact, Arogya and I were together on that job and working by the day and night to bring out the National Digital Health Management Policy, Health Data Management Policy, which is kind of short of a legislation. It contains all the provisions that are required to see that the privacy of the individual is protected and the security of the data is preserved, and at the same time the purpose of providing efficient digital services is also efficiently met. That kind of a balance you will see in the data management policy, and these are the kind of contributions towards data security and privacy. We have on this panel, of course, tremendous expertise, in these areas, and I'm sure that the other panelists like Rama, representing the DSCI, and Gulshan and I had worked a decade ago back, and we were together in formulating the first national cyber security policy in 2013. So such eminent stalwarts are here with us, and I thank NHA for calling me for this occasion. Thank you, Arogya.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I think that sets the stage very beautifully, particularly with the 4 principles that you mentioned of a federated architecture, privacy and security by design, data minimalism, as well as ensuring that it is citizen-centric. And I think this would be a good segue to Dr. Sharma to see how these have played out in practice, because that's one thing that always I think of when we are at these sessions, particularly around any digital use case, is that these are all good principles. How does it play out in practice? So I would like you to share your experiences of how it's playing out in practice in the ABDM ecosystem.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sengupta. My predecessor in office as Secretary IT, Sri Satyanarayana ji, he has already actually listed out all the basic principles which are the foundation of the architecture of the NDHB and blueprint, and then finally become into the core principles of ABDM. I like to go back a little, back in the history when we did Aadhaar, and I think there is no project in this country which has been, sort of attacked on all kinds of fora on the privacy principle or the privacy debate as has been the unique identification project of India, Aadhaar. And this is started in 2009, and there was no law, and in fact there was not such a great clamor for privacy also about 13, 14 years back, imagine. And then what happened, everybody started just, arguing that Aadhaar violates privacy in 2014, 15, 16, and finally the judgment came probably in 2018. So then, then ultimately when we were designing the project, at that time we were conscious of this fact that privacy is going to be an important facet of this project. So therefore, we implied all those principles which Mr. Satyanarayana mentioned, the privacy by design, minimalism and federated architecture of transactions. All these principles were actually very clearly applied. And then privacy by design itself has a number of principles, which is basically when somebody uses your data, you get a notice. If somebody cannot use your data without your consent, notice, all those stuff which are the core principles of privacy by design, they were incorporated. But unfortunately, when there is no law, then anybody can challenge anything. Because it's the law which actually specifies actually what is not to be done, what contravenes the law. Law sets out those limits, those boundaries. And if there is no boundary, then anybody can say that this ball is out of the court or this ball is in the court. I mean, you don't have any kind of principle to determine as to whether something is violative of privacy and something is not violative of privacy. Something is violative of security, something is not. So that debate has, and of course we also put the principle of the Aadhaar number will be completely bereft of any intelligence, it will be a random number and stuff like that. All kinds of things were there. And fortunately, the system which was designed in 2009 and which was tested on in 2017-18 actually came out with flying colors. So that we think that whether there is a law or no law, the idea is that the basic construct of privacy, which Mr. Satyanarayana very eloquently articulated in those 4 principles, that if you follow that architecture will ensure you that you will, any test, this whole thing is put to, you will come out with flying colors. So I think the principles which were prescribed in the National Digital Health Blueprint, they have been very clearly put into the design. And as and when we, ensure, and as and when we look at any building block, we always figure out whether this building block passed the test of those 4 or 5 principles or not. Only when it does, then and only then we incorporate it in our building block kind of library, if you want to call it that way. So on the basis, this is working. Unfortunately, today people have all kinds of, if privacy is not defined, then anybody can, raise anything of privacy. I mean, people can say, my name is private. Now, if your name is private, somebody will have to call you, then you can't be called, you can't be identified, right? In fact, in IPC, there is a provision, IPC or CRPC, you guys are lawyers, where a police officer asks you your name, and if you don't disclose it, you may be arrested. And that law is still valid. So therefore, people take the definition of privacy to such great extents that, anything becomes private. So for example, one question was asked, oh, you are giving Aadhaar numbers to people. Are you taking their consent while giving their numbers? And I said, yes, we are taking their consent. But let's say for worst case, we are just assigning them a number. So when you go to a hospital, they give you some kind of number, a reference number. When you go to a laboratory for getting your test done, they give you a reference number. It is the reference number by which you retrieve your record. It's reference number which you remember. Anything, you know, when you make a complaint online or offline, they give you some kind of ticket number. That ticket number is what you, essentially what are we doing? We are opening your health account, what is called a zero balance health account, put it this way, very simply. We're just giving a number to you, and then it is your choice to use that number or not to use that number. But some people, you know, always, so what I want to say broadly is that we are ensuring that all the basic principles of privacy by design and federated architecture, consent level, citizen centricity, they are all being incorporated. Also the security architecture, which is the health data management policy and other policies, they are also being done. But I think the federated data structure takes care of the security aspects also, because then there is no aggregation of the data at any point, at any place. And therefore, I think these two issues have been adequately addressed in the design. But then, of course, it's a democratic country, anybody can raise any issue and anybody can raise legal, you know, disputes can always be raised. That's there. But I think we are very confident that we are doing everything which is, you know, citizen-centric, and where citizen is actually the in charge or the custodian or the, not the custodian exactly, controller of his or her own data. And I think in health context, this becomes very important because health data is certainly very sensitive data, and nothing should be done without the consent of the citizen. And at every stage, you know, in the morning itself, we told you about the consent manager, which is sitting at the heart of the whole system, the Abdm. That consent manager is the one which any record sharing takes place. It is a digital consent token which is given by the consent manager. And we are very lucky to have actually notified the consent artifact way back in 2014. And that consent artifact is the one which is actually ensuring that we have a digital consent token. In fact, GDPR is not working because they don't have such kind of digital token which can be given and which is verifiable, which can actually do that job. So I think we are you know, taking care of those issues. Of course, we are always alert to the suggestions which we receive, and then we always examine as to whether we are doing something right or not. And we are very consultative in our nature. Consultation on everything. Consultation on UHI, consultation on PHR, consultation on HFR, HPR, everything is finally crafted and drafted by us after a thorough consultation with all these stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharma. I think it's always reassuring to note that privacy and security is at the core, and as I say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating with the Aadhaar ecosystem, which we've both worked on, as in despite all these criticisms, as in there has not been a single security breach from the CIDR. At the end of the day, these are facts, and as far as privacy breaches are concerned, again, no significant breach of any kind at all from the ecosystem. And I'm sure that with the fledgling national digital health ecosystem, as in it will be similar as well. But as you rightly mentioned, as in it takes two hands to clap. There is obviously the government which is building out this ecosystem as a public good, but it is a public good, which means that it needs private sector, citizens, individuals to all be part of this ecosystem. So maybe this is a good segue for me to take this to Rama. In terms of what you think are both the opportunities for private sector players to ensure that privacy and security are at the core in the applications that are being built on top of this platform, and how do you see this progressing? Because as I was just coming here, just an anecdote, there was a very large billboard of Apple which is saying that privacy, full stop, that's Apple. So obviously Apple is now using privacy in a way that is distinguishing it from its market participants. As in, how do you see privacy and security play a critical role amongst the private sector?
Thank you, Arogya. Very difficult to go after two Thank you, Arogya. Very difficult to go after two legends in e-governance and digital services. I'll try and do my best. So to answer your question, Arogya, I just want to step back a little bit on what is the ecosystem of private sector service providers in healthcare, which are servicing the health sector in India and from India other geographies. I think that's what defines the increasing maturity and attention to security and privacy, because we have the large services companies which are building platforms for things like HMIS, or tomorrow when platforms like the Unified Health Interface comes up, how do you onboard the entire ecosystem? Then there are the new age health tech companies. So whenever such one interesting technology trend we are seeing in healthcare is that even mid-sized hospitals are no longer going for small bespoke products. They are going for proven solutions, because now that maturity of IT adoption in the health sector has come to a certain stage, and post the pandemic, because of the focus on digital channels, it has increased. So once you are adopting a proven product and a platform, there is some minimum guarantee of security design and privacy by design concepts, because you are not just taking a new bespoke or untested solution. It could be a large player in the healthcare, like it could be CDAC, or it could be any one of our tech industry members. And when health tech companies are building products, it could even be a mobile-based product or a solution or any other apps that they are building. They are not really building only for one geography. They are building it for multiple markets, right? So I think taking into care because healthcare is quite well regulated everywhere. Taking into consideration what are those health sector regulations in those 2-3 geographies that a provider is trying to tap into, automatically builds a certain level of maturity. Now, when it comes to, when you say private sector, I also want to address on behalf of the health sector, who are some of our DSCI members. Now, one interesting thing, just like we have seen platformization on the technology side, in the health sector, we are seeing a consolidation and a hub and spoke model. So the moment you're talking about a hub and spoke model, the tertiary hospital with mid-sized hospitals in tier 1, tier 2 towns automatically ensures that when they are deploying IT, when they are selecting a product, or when they're integrating, some standards are met. Because we talk to those CIOs of the large hospitals which are now building those hub and spoke architectures for the health services delivery. Interestingly, you will be surprised, normally when you have a technology or a cyber security privacy training program, the maximum attendance will be from banking, oil and gas, insurance, telecom. Last year, there was a demand from the health sector CIOs through a body called CHIME, which is a very well-known body in the health sector for CIOs. They demanded from DSCI a cybersecurity strategy privacy training program. And I'll be surprised, normally when you call them for any session, they just don't have the time, because that's how busy they are. They gave multiple Sundays, 5 to 6 hours, and they underwent the training. And at least I am aware of 10 to 20 large hospital CIOs who have taken the 2019 version of the privacy bill. And they started gearing up internally, doing those assessments, doing those reviews. Some may not be at the level of scale in which a large bank would have done. Because banking sector is regulated for several years, they have a very mature regulator, those frameworks were already in place, dictated by RBI. So I will not compare it with that, but if I compare it with what a health sector CIO would have been doing for privacy 3 years back, or 5 years or 10 years back, and now they took the 2019 version of the bill and they started doing a lot of homework. They created a small team. So I would say both the provider side and the health sector side and the technology industry, because the platformization is happening, and the moment platforms are built, I think attention to privacy, security. In most large hospitals, you talk to a CIO, ISO 27001 is now a hygiene factor. It's not like somebody is not looking at it. They are studying. I think they do study regulations, and also medical tourism drives a lot of attention to cybersecurity privacy in the large hospitals, at least that I'm aware of, because they get patients from all countries, and they know now that privacy is a fundamental right. If the bill is delayed, it's okay, but we need to gear up. So I don't think there is no attention to privacy in hospitals. I see a significant focus on that in the last 2 to 3 years, but on a scale of 1 to 10, if I would say banks in India are giving attention at a scale of 8 to 9, maybe hospitals are giving it at a 5 to 6, but they will be investing more. And when they look at mobile applications, I think the way even the operating system platforms like Android or Apple, maybe there is a level of maturity when an app is getting deployed for a consumer, particularly as critical as healthcare, life and fitness devices. I think there is attention and then needs to be done more. Where I would say we need to invest in is just the way there's a lot of investment that happens from the banking industry, from RBI, in financial literacy, or in, you know, online safety. I think we also need to invest a lot more in building awareness among patients and their families, as in when they visit hospitals, on what care they should take when they're working with an online product. I don't think consumers of health services get as much attention as the financial services.
That's right. And thanks very much, Rama. I think that's actually very encouraging that despite being a unregulated sector, unlike the banking sector, on its own, the private sector is thinking about gearing up and making privacy and security central to its way of operation. And I think, as you said, the encouraging trend is that of platformization. And given the fact that we will have platforms, as in it is likely that privacy and security will be at the core, that's actually a good segue to Abhishek Singh, who heads NEGD. Obviously, interoperability has been core to a lot of your functioning, and interoperability from a privacy perspective is a double-edged sword. As in, one, of course, interoperability is very useful because that's what allows you to move from, in this case, from one hospital to another, because the two systems talk to each other. But from a privacy perspective, it's also something that can allow you to build a profile of an individual. That profile could be used for purposes that you have not consented to. So how do you see the platformization, as Rama pointed out, and the growth of interoperability in the healthcare sector? If you could share some of your experiences.
Thank you, Arogya, and it's indeed a delight to be in this forum and to listen to my seniors, Satyanarayana sir and Naresh Sharma sir and Rama, and waiting for Mr. Gulshan Rai, who has been at the forefront of cybersecurity, and Rahul Matan. I was just telling him in the intervals, every week I look forward to his articles, which gives so much deep insights into how this sector is shaping up and how are the privacy and legal issues involved. So yes, first and foremost, I agree. We always face this dilemma that on one hand, the objective of e-governance is to make maximum services available and to ensure that the hardship that citizens face in living their normal lives and getting access to basic services is addressed. At the same time, we also have to balance that how do we handle the challenges that come from the privacy and security point of view. So while privacy and security are core, and we always say that we will ensure that the no data of any citizen is shared with anyone, like many of the MNCs and many of the tech companies do. But at the same time, the objective always remains, what is more important for a citizen? And when we talk to the most citizens, always endeavor is, and the desire of most people is to get efficient services. And to get efficient services, there will be some compromise with regard to sharing of data between various systems. So while doing so, do we lay down the rules? Do we lay down the guidelines? Like the onus of making data secure and using any data and any information for the purpose which is collected is primarily for the entity which is first collecting that data. But if that data or information is to be shared with any other vertical or any other system or any other branch of the government for delivering another public service, then the same level of responsibility is transferred to the person who is taking that role for delivery of service. And building interoperable systems brings in a lot of efficiency, reduces the hardship citizens face, reduces the time people waste in going to multiple public authorities to access services, brings in innovation, because once we allow data sharing between various government departments and non-personal data or anonymized data to other stakeholders, then on that framework, a lot of efficient services can be built in. One example will be that, like for example, we are building a project for the Women and Child Department, like under Poshan Tracker we call it, under which the basic nutrition parameters of more than 10 crores, 100 million, more than 100 million pregnant women and infant children are tracked by 12 lakh Anganwadi workers, like their height, their weight, how much nutrition they are given, and all these parameters help in monitoring the growth of newborn children. And very often it does give us insights with regard to if there is any child which requires any health intervention. So some of this data which is captured by the WCT system, by the Anganwadi workers, might be relevant to the healthcare system. So if we do not share this data across these two databases, across these departments, we will be losing out on a big opportunity. Then similarly at the Anganwadi center, like when the assessments are done, 3 to 5, as per the new education policy, education is imparted at the Anganwadi centers. So a lot of data and information comes in with regard to if there is a child has a learning disability, or if has any other intervention is required, if he's a special child, if he has autism, if this information is not shared with the, for example, the education database, we will be losing out. So the interventions which are there, which a school education system can do, they will not be able to deliver that. Similarly, like if we integrate like Manrega database, should a Manrega beneficiary not also be an Ayushman Bharat health beneficiary? But to enable that, this information will have to be shared with that system. Should he also not get a ration card, which is done by a different department? So when it comes to citizens, when we talk to citizens always want interoperable systems in which they would prefer something asked only once. If the government, if one database of a government has asked for a particular information of a citizen, they would ideally want that to be shared to others so that government is able to proactively offer services. So when we do this and when we build interoperable systems, when we lay down the standards, the metadata standards, the data standards, the tech standards, the API standards, and write the protocol with which the way in which these data will be shared. At the same time, the issues of privacy and security are also tackled. When we say privacy and security by design, or privacy first or security first, it's not something that's just there to write in the terms of use or in the privacy policy. It's actually built in the way we architect the systems, we design our systems, and when we do that, these responsibilities are passed on. Yes, we don't have a law which will ensure that compliance to that, but the protocols which the government has built follows that. And that's the reason because of which just what was mentioned, that there has not been a single data breach of Aadhaar system, and the same applies for other systems that we are building in, whether it's the Poshan system or whether it's the National Academic Depository or the National Academic Bank of Credits or the DigiLocker system, which has more than 5.6 billion documents there, which are being shared on common standards, making possible interoperable systems to be developed. So since we follow these principles, that is what ensures privacy and security. So what I would conclude by saying that building interoperable systems results in a lot of value, especially for the citizens and the departments which are offering the services, and we need to ensure privacy and security by building it while architecting these systems.
Thanks very much, Abhishek ji. As in, I think this is a really useful intervention because we've heard throughout the day today that we have to build citizen-centric systems. And I think sometimes in this privacy debate, we tend to forget that it's ultimately a citizen's privacy that you're talking about, and a citizen wants certain services. So, you know, you can't really make it a sword by which a citizen is denied certain kinds of basic benefits. Dr. Rai, I'll come to you. With the National Digital, with ABDM, we are now building perhaps one of the largest healthcare ecosystems in the world. And one of the things that's been spoken about many times is that security is at the core, because obviously we don't want to ensure that there is any breach of any kind that happens in this kind of ecosystem, particularly with the kind of sensitive information that we are dealing with health data. So as one of the leading security experts in the country, what are those principles that you think any ecosystem that wants to build a cyber secure system must have at its core?
Thank you, Arogya. First of all, I must thank you, and I must thank NHA, particularly Dr. R. Sharma, for inviting me, giving me opportunity to share dice with a legend who are my bosses and who have been my mentor all along for so many years. Now, you have raised a very valid point, and I have been listening very carefully, my earlier panelists there, the issue of security and privacy. After all, why the security and privacy now we are talking about has become important, and the NHA has arranged a special session on this subject itself. Now, if you look at the digital transformation which is now going on, or which has just started, it's a paradigm shift than what we have seen so far there. We are talking about a decentralized internet. We're talking about a Web 3.0. We are talking about implementing the blockchain kind of a technology in every system there. Now, the technology has become a part and parcel integrated to any system, any ecosystem there, whether it is health or economics or banks, financial, you talk defense, anything is a part. It may be small cost of the entire system, but it's a very important heart of the system that it drives the efficiency and productivity of that particular system there. That's one. But in this transformation which is happening there, I said, if you look at the 2G, 3G, these are all 4G, these are all incremental kind of a thing. Today we have moved a paradigm shift. You are going to 5G, you can't go to 4G to 5G, you have to change all structure there. Now in this scenario of distributed system there, where you don't know where the systems are lying or how the data is flowing. The systems are getting more connected. Entire health system is changing, entire systems are changing there. Your health system or your road on a roller there, they are going to sit on the same network, same internet, same network there. In a distributed kind of internet, the issue of security or privacy become important. Now they are the two faces of the same coin which we toss in the cricket match or somewhere else. But ultimately we need to be very clear, what do we want? We want a security or a privacy? In this heterogeneous world where the systems are connected. I was listening very carefully, particularly Dr. R. Sharma there, where he said privacy aspect there. To some extent, I do agree with him that what do we achieve first? We want to secure the data where you have an interconnected system from the ECG machine or X-ray or MRI, data is coming to you, patient system is going over there. Data is being put. Ultimately, the whole way of inputting data into health system, your system will change, drastically will change it there. So what is more important for me? What is the priority for us? Of course, both the factors need to be taken care of. But if I have to choose myself, yes, you are a lawyer, Manthan is a lawyer, you will say privacy, I am a technocrat, I will see the security, that's a different issue. But I will give you my objective view. If it is more important to look after the security of a data in the initial stage in the privacy. Dr. Sharma mentioned about it, the GDPR. If you look at GDPR, you are a well knowledgeable about the GDPR. GDPR focus on the privacy aspect. The security aspect was a second kind of a stage. If you look at the other systems in the world, the Americans are trying to bring it, privacy network, that's a dilemma, and my understanding is that they're focusing on a more security than a privacy. And I firm believer, being a technocrat who has worked in so much area there, that the health system requires a data protection system first, then the privacy there. Privacy will follow. If you are securing the data, I think privacy will follow there. And I mean, the world over, you can see many factors you can see in India also there. I think the privacy is necessary, but priority of the system should be security. Now, what all we do in this country, if you talk about the security first there. Today, the security in this emerging digital transformation need to be updated by leap and frog there. The whole application systems are changing there. Now, whatever system you are making the largest national health system, it's not going to be on the old concept of the writing the software and doing that, okay, which many of us have written over here. It's going to be an auto code generator there, where you pick up a code from it's going to be the next layer of the open source kind of a system. We are going to pick up a code from GitHub and all kind of thing and just paste it there. These are auto generator codes are there. Whether in that scenario, distributed, heterogeneous, auto code implementation, open source, we have to decide what priority we need to give. Security aspect, in my view, in such a scenario, we need to give more and more important to in the scenario. And security need to be built up right from the design level. The way we built up our house, we designed the windows, we designed the corridors, and in the building there's a civil kind of a system there. I think security need to be built up right at that level, looking at the scenario which is emerging there. So I am glad once again that I have been invited, I have been given an opportunity to express my word. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rai. I think that's a very practical and useful intervention in terms of the fact that there cannot be a system that is designed that it does not have security at its core right at the very outset. And I think that's Rahul might be able to complement that in terms of why privacy is also as critical to that core. And if I were to be a little specific, given the fact that we've said that privacy is at its core and the citizen at the end of the day is the person who must be thinking about when we are designing a system, one of the things that we think of as lawyers when we are designing a system that is in the interest of citizens is consent. Right? So the citizen must know what he or she is consenting to. And as Dr. Sharma said, as in Abha numbers are given on the basis of consent, a person wants it. And as Mr. Abhishek Singh also said that, we essentially citizens want to be asked a question only once. As you really don't want to be asked a question time and again and give your information time and again. So one, how do we ensure that consent is informed? And if consent isn't working well, then what is it? What are the alternatives that we can think of in addition to or in substitution? That's number one. The second, which is a personal question that I had, given the fact that you've worked with more tech companies than perhaps any other lawyer in this country, advising them, I often get the sense that lawyers and technologists don't talk to each other as much as we should. And part of the reason as to why there is so much backlash about privacy and so on is that it is a discussion and a debate that is driven primarily by lawyers who have very little understanding of the technology, if I may be very frank. So Rahul, how do you think that lawyers and technologists can perhaps talk to each other so that we can actually have a meaningful discussion on privacy and security and not an adversarial one?
Thank you, Argo, and thank you, NHA, for inviting me. Sundays are precious. I never leave my house. Now I've flown all the way to Delhi because I thought this was a panel I must attend. I've been listening with a lot of interest to the conversation on the dais, and to me, every social interaction is a calculated erosion of privacy. Because every time you have any sort of interaction with anyone, you're bleeding some data, you're bleeding some information, people are building profiles about you. And when we have it doesn't mean that we don't have social interactions. When we have social interactions, we, in a very calculated way, engage. We decide what to tell the person we're speaking to or engaging with. And I think the challenge that we all face is that in the digital world, we feel we've lost control. And that's why the discussion around consent is so important, because in a sense, consent is a way to give us back control. Now, there's a problem with over-engineering for consent. And as a lawyer, as a privacy lawyer, I'm going to say things which are slightly controversial today. So please forgive me, Argo, as the only other lawyer on the panel. But consent, I've long believed, cannot be the sole pillar on which we protect our privacy. GDPR tried that. And as other people on the panel have said, the moment GDPR came out, we all got emails saying, please accept my privacy policy. After the 7th email, I just accepted it without thinking about it. It's happening now. Every website we go, they say, please either accept my cookies or manage your cookies. I tried to go to manage my cookies, and then, after the 3rd one, I gave up. And so you just say, I accept. So there is a problem if we over-engineer towards consent. But we still need to find ways to give people some control over what's happening with data. And that's why what's happening in India is extremely powerful. I don't think we realize how powerful it is. And so just to pick up on what Dr. Rai just mentioned, around the world there are maybe 2 or 3 ways in which people are thinking about it. Rama and Argo wrote about it in the Justice Sri Krishna report. There is the US model, which is laissez-faire. Very much of the US model is let the companies build, and the companies we will regulate and they will manage everything. There is the European model, which said, let us build regulations. We can't do the innovation. We don't have the companies. We will put out regulations. To my mind, both those have failed. What India has done since over a decade now, since started with Aadhaar and all the way through all the various innovations, all the way now to ONDC, which is the Network for Digital Commerce, is India has melded the two together. We've built technology platforms, and on those technology platforms, we have allowed private innovation. On the same technology platform, we have made it possible for regulators to regulate and innovators to innovate. This is extraordinarily powerful. It is why even without a privacy law, and I hear your pain, Dr. Sharma, about the fact that we don't have a privacy law, but even without a privacy law, we have built systems that are probably the most privacy enhancing systems anywhere in the world. Because we've built systems that have dials inbuilt into them. We have built systems that allow regulators to tweak the extent to which trade-offs can be made. Our digital consent artifact provides the kind of consent that I think is meaningful to all of us in our busy lives. I don't think it'll work in the advertising context because we are bombarded with 20, 30 different ads each website, because it's not designed to work for that. It's designed to work in the lending. In our entire life, we will take 150 loans. It is designed to work in the healthcare context. In our entire life, hopefully, we don't go to the doctor more than 100 times. I mean, I would be very upset if I had to go to the doctor 100 times. And in total, between healthcare and finance, two of the most important sectors where this works, if we have exercised our mind 250 times to provide our consent, I think we can do it. And in these circumstances, building a technology infrastructure that that gives you a consent request with all the notice parameters, and then it requests you to do it just in time. So this is not a consent that you give for something that you will do 10 years later. It is something that you will do now. I think that is something that we can use and operate on. But I think there are many challenges to this. I think that one challenge is, of course, to take the European systems and foist it here. As much as Mr. Satyanarayana mentioned the data minimization principle, I think the data minimization principle goes contrary to the use of data for AI, and in all those systems, the more data you have, the better outcomes you have. There are challenges with informed consent, particularly in the healthcare sector, because these are extremely complicated decisions that people have to make. And I don't think we can rely on electronic systems to ensure that we have as much information out to the person who's making that decision. And so in a paper I wrote well before any of this, I had argued for something called learned intermediaries, people who can help with providing consent. And can we think about that kind of an infrastructure, not for the regular day-to-day work, but for the more complex medical decisions that you need to consent for. So my suggestion is, let's look at the frameworks we've built. We've built extraordinarily powerful frameworks, and I don't think we pat ourselves on the back enough for what it is that we've done. Most of last year I've spent examining systems around the world. I know that Europe, Australia, many parts of the world are looking at us with envy whenever we discuss the things that we've achieved. They just say, teach us how to do it. And I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for what it is that we've built. And I don't think we also define it in the way that we should, because it's not GDPR, it's not the US model, it is our own bespoke model. And this model allows us to do things that I think the rest of the world would love to be able to do.
Thanks very much, Rahul. I think there's a number of points that you made there, and a lot of it resonates, because I think this is this will go beyond healthcare and technology, but this is a colonial hangover that we have, that when we do our regulation making, and we are all guilty. We are all, I think the mic doesn't like the word colonial hangover in the Ashoka Hotel, but when we all do our law and regulation drafting, we first say ki dekhte hain US mein kaisa hai. As you know, let's look at the best practices in some other countries. I think here we are at the cusp of something where we are building something new and original ourselves, and it is something that can lead the way rather than follow. I've picked up 3 themes here, which I think we can have a couple of questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience for questions. One is this idea of platformization. We are building platforms here, which other people can come and participate in. How can we ensure that we are building platforms that work for privacy and security by design? Number 2 is citizens, and how we ensure that the citizen remains at the core and not some abstract concept. And number 3 is business opportunities. Can we really think about business opportunities around privacy and security? Because my personal peeve has always been that we are a little defensive when we come to questions around privacy and security. It's like, we are doing some back foot defense, whereas actually it could perhaps be business opportunities. So, Dr. Sharma, I'll come to you with a question on your thoughts as to how, in your vision, say maybe 10 years down the line, what does a healthcare ecosystem that has privacy and security at its core, that has built out a platform, look like? What does that look like? I'd invite you to think about that, and then we can take that to the others.
Well, I think, in India, as I think Rahul rightly pointed out, I think we have been able to build systems de novo, which are pretty unique in many aspects. One of the advantages which we had was that we did not have too much of a legacy. The legacy systems, when they developed in US or Europe, they have developed into a monopolistic model. They have, finally, in the healthcare data space, there are only 2 companies in US, and they don't talk to each other, and they basically are monopolizing. So that platformization of the digital systems in general, or the other whichever area they are, whether it's a digital commerce or other kinds of areas, they have developed into monopolies. So that's one part. India, in that sense, has been actually doing things which are inclusive, frugal, interoperable, built for a scale. Those are some of the stuff which we have done. And I think I also join Rahul in saying that probably we are not even able to congratulate ourselves, and I think there is a whole world out there which is actually looking to learn from us, but we have not been able to leverage on that. I think we need to do more work there. Now, from that part, we have also realized that this platformization also is a kind of monopolistic in nature. So if you have, let's say, look at social media platforms. Either it is Facebook, or it is Twitter, or in digital commerce it is Amazon. So essentially you end up becoming the winner takes all situation, and you end up having 1 or 2 or 3 kind of fellows. This is what actually happens. And once they become monopolistic, then they start doing many unethical things, which for us are very unethical, but for them they start doing it in the garb of their own value systems or their own systems. We were, as you remember, we were talking the other day about the system, the gatekeepers. Now, while we have net neutrality in this country, where we realize that internet is an open platform, and it must remain to be a permissionless platform, and it should not be divided into walled gardens. And therefore, India was the first country which very, very emphatically laid down the net neutrality law, and we actually, told Facebook that you can't do free basics out here. Now, what has happened? There are a couple of other, instruments which actually create those gatekeeping things. They are, some friend of mine called them faucets. So while we have done the overall, we have protected the internet from being divided, we are also now, having these distribution platforms, for example. And these platforms are now telling, oh, this is how your privacy policy should be. After all, they are distribution platform. They should not be concerned so much about the consent, what is called the content, except the fact that the application should not really be leaky or other kinds of problems they should not create. But they are doing that. India, on the other hand, we have gone now to what we are calling is that on the top of internet, we are building another set of protocols. Internet is built to be open, because of the protocol. And somebody was mentioning in the morning that Tim Berners-Lee basically created an internet which deliberately he did something which is basically a protocol based. And now what we are doing is we are again basing another layer on top of internet which is protocol based and which is as democratic as internet is. And that is something which we are now trying to build, whether it is open network for digital commerce or in health space, which is called UHI, the Unified Health Interface. You know, we named it after UPI, you know, Unified Payment Interface, so we said Unified Health Interface, and of course you have the Unified Logistics Interface, so everything is becoming unified in some sense. But it's very important to understand that if you have systems which are truly interoperable, then the systems are inherently democratic, inherently anti-monopolistic. In telecom sector, the interconnection is at the heart of the telecom. You know, if there was no interconnection, we would just have probably one or two telecom service providers, probably one, because that would have been the most efficient, because you don't have to talk, you know, go to other telco. So this is, I think, very, very important, and this is the way I see that when we have this digital infrastructure, as Rahul rightly pointed out, our model is we create the framework, and then we are not creating applications. Whatever applications we create, they are called only reference application. We created Bheem, but Bheem is not the competitor in the market. So essential idea is we just demonstrate that this is something feasible, this is can be done, and we openly open that source code and, you know, allow others to innovate on top of it. So innovation, we have 1,000 market players who are actually innovating on the sandbox of Abdm. So that, I think, this is going to be an extremely vibrant market, and it is going to give very, very rich dividends, both through the patients, the health system, ecosystem partners, and also the policy makers, because it is going to become a data-driven policy making. That's right. So that's
no, I think that's a really good overarching perspective, and I invite any of the other panelists to please come in at any point of time. Mr. Satyanarayan, I wanted to, because Dr. Sharma has focused on the platform and that we are building platforms which are public goods. I also wanted to take up something that you had said in terms of how we are building citizen-centric systems. At the end of the day, we have to have citizen-centric systems, and I was just at a large public hospital, a large private hospital 10 days back, where I had to do my appointment online. But ultimately when it went to the doctor, as in the doctor was writing out with a pen and paper, as she always has. And I said, is there a possibility, actually what the gentleman was saying in the session earlier, is there a possibility that you can give this online? She said, there might be, but I'm not sure. Okay. So how do we ensure, and this is a very large private hospital chain, and it's the same thing in most cases, how do we ensure a healthcare system that is truly beneficial for citizens?
Yeah, I think we need to again go back to the, you know, the harmonious combination, I would say, and balancing of innovation and protection. Where does the line lie, and how to see that, you know, in a small clinic or a single doctor setup also, they're able to really talk to the machine and it converts it into the, talk to the mobile even, not any expensive equipment, and it automatically converts to EMR, EHR, etc. in the health scenario in a cost-effective manner and efficient manner. So that's innovation. It requires innovation on one side. So my take would be that we need to, it's a three-dimensional issue. One is a set of principles which are like the basic features of the Constitution in the space of privacy and security. Principles, platforms, and protocols. These three P's we have to work on together. It's not that, you know, platform is the villain of the piece. Okay, there are some large platforms, I don't want to name, but which have monopolized certain types of activities. Okay, but that doesn't negate the benefits of having, you know, a platform as such. So, protocol, definitely. Protocol will enable, all this kind of innovation because it enhances access, it enhances interoperability while preserving the security and privacy. So, protocol definitely is important. So, we need to, in India, I think we have been working, we have demonstrated this in several of our major programs and success stories in India. So, a combination of these three principles, platforms and protocols is very important, and we need to kind of lead in this as a country in this area, especially protocols. For instance, I will give you the example of while he has mentioned Sharmaji has mentioned about the health UHI. We need similar instruments in other things like agriculture, employment and several other transportation, etc., which will, lay down they don't be very restrictive and very prescriptive kind of a thing, but making interoperability possible, innovation possible at the same time. So I would also end by saying one more thing that is required is that we need to create a more holistic or kind of a integrated set of principles and guidelines in the space of security and privacy. Today we are saying data, security, privacy, etc. In the context of digital India, digitalization, etc., etc. But we have around the corner lot of frontier technologies which are called exponential technologies. Almost a dozen of them, whether it is AI, ML, IoT, drones, blockchain, DLT, you name it. You have so many, and data is again at the center. They bring their own kind of risks, which we cannot even predict at this point of time. Do you want to have a regulation for each one of them? A regulation for AI, a regulation for drones, a regulation for, each one of these technologies? No. It becomes, even pushing through one legislation is pretty difficult, we have seen, and time taking. And pushing through a legislation which encompasses all these new technologies is a nightmare. So we need a meta governance framework which applies to all the exponential technologies, emerging technologies, is one suggestion I am leaving on the table. Thank you.
No, I think that's an excellent suggestion with its principles, platforms, protocols. Rama, would you like to add something to that?
I wanted to add to what Sharma sir talked about. See, where I think we have really led the way is developing platforms which are typically very large-scale public interest platforms. I mean, while there's a lot of deliberation going around public interest technologies, I think right from platforms like eSeva, the integrated citizen services, now UPI, and in near future UHI, right? I think where we need to look at is worldwide now when you talk to deep dive security professionals or privacy professionals, we are saying, and when you have to address all of these risks at a scale of 1.2 billion population, that the cognitive burden of this should shift left. That means when you build the product and you build the service, you need to think those developers or those who are providing that, which could be a hospital or it could be a health tech company, need to think so that the cognitive burden of tracking whether I am working on an online safe way and whether everything is going right on the privacy way is shifted to the service provider rather than the actual user. So that's one thing that is happening. And also, particularly because we are in this health conference, there needs to be an agreed mechanism on how non-personal data can be shared for innovation, for research. Because sometimes you talk to any healthcare researcher, too much anonymized data coming to a healthcare researcher or academician is not of any use. right? So there, I don't think any patients would have a challenge in their data being shared. I think what is expected is transparency in the disclosures on where the data is being shared and what data is being shared. Exactly. I'll just draw attention to a very new bill, not a new bill, a new law that has come up in Germany. I think exact name I forgot, it's some Patients Data Act, where, you know, they are really talking about a nuanced thing of data donations by the patient. And that data donations again is very nuanced. That means I am a patient or a family in a hospital, and it's not like I want to donate everything. I want to be able to donate my gene profiling information so that some academic institution can do research. So there are very evolved concepts of data sharing that are coming, expectations from the user, data donations in the healthcare sector. I think we need to have a very good debate even on what is the governance framework for non-personal data, because particularly in healthcare domain, sharing of that data for innovation purposes in a very balanced way without obviously diluting the privacy principles and for research is very important.
Rahul, do you want to comment on that? Particularly on this question of... I think we started 15 minutes late, so we have been told we can go till 6:15. But the firecrackers are starting early. It's a month to Diwali. So Rahul, do you want to get into this question of what Rama was saying, non-personal data framework, as well as the sectoral regulation question? Because as Dr. Satyanarayana was saying, as in we need a kind of meta set of rules, but we also need something for particular sectors. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, no. This is not working at all. Check. Yeah. So, no, absolutely. So, I think non-personal data, quite frankly, I don't think we really need a regulation as just some clarity as to what needs to be done. I think as long as, and what I really liked when I first saw the blueprint was the anonymization module that you had put in. It's the first time I saw something like that. It's something I've been banging on for a really long time, because data in plain text, as Dr. Rai will say, is just a recipe for attack. It's a honeypot. So if we can build anonymization at the core of our system, so that the moment it's collected, it's anonymized, you've automatically got non-personal data. And that data is useful in inordinately, in a number of different ways. And so I think certainly there's got to be something that allows us to use this non-personal data in new and innovative ways. I don't necessarily think a regulation is the right word, but we certainly need a framework to allow us to exploit this and to unlock the value in it. As far as the sectoral regulation is concerned, I've for a long time been talking about this concept in the technology regulatory sector of principle-based regulation. It's recognized around the world as this acronym PBR. It is, quite frankly, what the GDPR is. GDPR is a set of principles, and then they got carried away and they made it into 90 different sections. And I think, quite frankly, the Justice Sri Krishna report also very firmly based in principles, and then, at my view, got carried away and prescribed 14 different items to be notified. I think we need, because we cannot keep up with technology. We're already, we drafted this, the first privacy law I drafted in 2012. It's 2022, and we've had the Justice A.P. Shah Committee, we've had the Justice Sri Krishna Committee, we've had the 2019 draft, we've had the Joint Parliamentary Committee, and now we have a new draft coming out. So to say that we can write law to keep up with technology is not possible. What we have to do is find the principles that we can apply to govern at a meta level, as in terms of the overarching principles. And then we need agile regulation that are very focused. And I think this is the other problem. The next article I'm going to write is on the draft telecom bill. It's a lovely attempt to reimagine telecom regulation. But then in the definitions, we got a little carried away and we put everything in the kitchen sink into the definition. So now a message means just about everything, including a stream of intelligence. I have no idea how that's going to be applied. So if we have principles and we have focused sectoral regulations, let's regulate what we want to regulate, what we can get our arms around. Let's not with this FOMO that always comes into us lawyers and regulators, put an etc. or such as, and then that throws a spanner in the works, and then everyone is confused and no one follows it. I think we fear that we will not be able to issue a new regulation, and so we throw everything into the regulation. We should stop that. We should say, look, this is only to regulate what we know. If what we know changes in a week, we will regulate again. But we should not regulate thinking that our regulation will cover everything in 20 years, because that's contrary to the idea of principle-based regulation. Right. And if there's something that we could think of to, on the one hand, have meta principles, on the other hand, have very narrow sectoral regulations that we promise you we will change next week if it's required, that is the way to go.
Thanks very much, Rahul. I think now in all these tech conferences, we also have to clarify when we say meta, that we mean meta in an abstract way and not in the terms of the company. I think we are good to take questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please just do raise your hand and identify yourself, and I'm sure Mike will find its way to you. We've got one there and one there. We can collect two, and Dr. Rai, I'll come to you. Yes, there's a lady at the back. If you or maybe we'll be able to hear you. Yeah, no, I doubt it too. Yeah, there are many mics here. So.
Hi, hello, and thank you to all the respected panelists for this very insightful session. I represent the team from Oracle Cerner here, and I just had a question around going back to what R.S. Sharma sir mentioned, that it has to be a citizen-centric approach, and the citizen has to be the custodian and the controller of the data and the information. So in the context of ABDM, where we are creating health IDs, the ABA IDs, it is mostly linked to the mobile number or the Aadhaar at the time of creation. So in cases of populations which are dependents or require some assistance, like could be population under 18 or the elderly population or some fringe population like the tribals or those who need assistance with the technology. In that case, when the creation of ABA is happening and the linking of records is happening, it's mostly assisted. Like in our experience in the public sector implementations, we've noticed that in a village, maybe one family has just one mobile phone, or maybe there are 250 people in an area and they don't have a mobile phone, and they are dependent on the ASHA workers' mobile phone, which is being used in our screening information or data which is being captured. So in that case, how do we take care of the privacy and security in such populations, and how do we envision that going forward?
Thank you. Just in the interest of time, we'll take 2-3 together and then we can answer. There was a gentleman there, right there in front. And then if you could have a mic to those gentlemen there. Yeah, please.
Yeah, this is Srinivas from Japaigo, and thank you for the insights. And I have a question on misuse of data consent, actually. So I suppose I have given a consent for a service, like suppose I opted for a nutrition advice, and the provider uses for upskilling or cross-selling that consent. So how we are going to tackle with that issue? How are we giving the the authority to comply on this misuse to the beneficiary? Thank you.
Thank you. And please get the mic there on the other side. There's a question right there. We'll take this and then we'll go through and answer them.
Thank you and good evening. It was quite a resourceful interaction. I'm Dr. Girish from NIMHANS, Bangalore. We, that is Government of Karnataka, NIMHANS and IIITB have developed a software for mental health care services across all public healthcare institutions in Karnataka. Now that is where was the issue in terms of the conflicts and challenges when we look at consent and then subsequently the privacy and anonymization of data. The issue is we were troubled in terms of what forward, But I think, Rai sir, when you were mentioning that we should prefer security over privacy, and also I think Rahul also mentioned about it in a similar tone. Our commissioner is also here, Randeep sir. As CEO, can we take a decision? Because before entering the hall, I was a bit wavered in terms of what is set out in the legislation is something different. Can we practically take this approach and then roll out the activity in terms of preferring security over privacy?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Girish. Dr. Rai, would you like to take that? And you were saying something anyway, we'll make that point and then we'll come to Dr. Sharma.
Thank you, Arogya. I mean, I just wanted to highlight two, three more factors whilst you're designing, and want to little digress from what discussion we are doing it, how to make the health system more good. One is the way we are discussing, looking at it, but there is a other aspect, we talk about business aspects also. So slightly away from what discussion we are trying to do that. First thing, while designing the national health system, we need to keep in the mind that the data is flowing on heterogeneous elements there, and there cannot be any data localization because you don't know where the data is lying at any point of a time. Data localization you can achieve if you are moving from point to point. If you are moving on the internet, which is the scenario today, you look at the ONDC environment, the country is evolving, the country is shifting toward that. You look at the UPI, what a business opportunity it has brought in. You look at the ONDC, where every platform in the country will get connected on a platform there. Data is going to move from a point A to point B or infinite point, I really don't know. Blocks may be set up in the country, blocks may be across the globe there. So in such a scenario, data localization is going to become important. If you look at the privacy aspect, data will be leaked out. There is no way data cannot be leaked out anywhere. It is very impossible to keep the data things. But with respect to the privacy, it would be little more easier to build a security on a layer. Anonymization is one aspect, encrypto is encryption is another aspect there. It will be slightly easier to bring the security, because if the data is secure, and if we say that misuse of data, we make it some sort of to legislation or to regulation, I think that will bring an enormous opportunity for the business in this country. That's one aspect I want to say. And I also want to strongly endorse one Rahul has said that the principles, and Dr. Stanara also has said it, principles and framework, because the law and the technology, they will always be a great difference there in implementation. Law will never catch up the technology how to do that. So it will be good to make a framework, good to make a customs, and particularly kind of a homogeneous system protocols we are evolving now there. That will be better to go for a policy, and that's kind of you make our regulation or framework, whatever we say, principles, we need to do that. The third aspect which I want to digress there, when you are particularly building the health system, and the doctors from the national, Bangalore has said it there. See, today in this country, we look at the patient aspect there. We try to settle their bill, we try to give them the medical treatment part of it. But such a health system will collect huge amount of data. Okay, the treatment, the disease of the patients, the treatment given to the patients there. We have more than 1,500 hospitals in this country, in a medical college and hospitals in the country, which are premier there. If you put the data, create the health system in such a manner that the data can be useful for the faculty to teach a student there. See, if you have I'm giving an example. I may have slightly deformed my bones there or fingers there. If a particular hole is captured in your health system there, it will be very easy to demonstrate to the student and impart the education there. Look, what treatment was given to this, uniform kind of a thing. In an environment like India, where the specialist things are getting over there, I think you need to create, you to be very, very selective, very, very careful in creating your national health system there, which can be of multiple purposes and multiple uses there.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right. You want a quick follow-up?
Just a quick follow-up based on the two questions which were asked. See, like when I was reflecting to the question about NIMHANS, like a mental health person accessing a service, or under 18 or elderly people or people who don't have IDs trying to access health services, and then looking at the debate that we are having about privacy and security. So what one needs to always see is what is our end objective? Though this panel is on privacy and security, but we are talking about digital healthcare, and while talking about digital healthcare, it's again not about technology, it's about healthcare. The prime objective which citizens are accessing from this system is trying to get better healthcare, better medical advice, and for that they would want the system to give them access to maybe telemedicine, to maybe access to electronic health records, maybe to access to a second opinion without having to undergo tests again. And while doing so, if we get too much lost on privacy and security, we might not end up giving healthcare which is required. And we do so for enabling that, the consent framework is there. And similarly, in people who cannot give the consent on their own, what happens in the physical world, like when digital is not there, somebody on their behalf gives the consent, their next of the kin or family member, whether it's under 18 or elderly person or a person with a mental health issues, that happens. So similar thing has to be replicated in the digital system also, and we should never lose sight that what is our end goal. And if we keep that in mind, solutions will come in, and we'll have to work around and ensure that while privacy and security are taken care of, but the end objective of providing quality healthcare by leveraging technology remains the priority and remains the focus.
Absolutely. Dr. Sharma, would you like to add anything to that? Because that question was directed at you.
I completely agree with what Abhishek has said, that ultimately we should realize that, what are we doing these things for? We are doing, these things to make health accessible, affordable, quality, this is the objective. And basically digital is a means to achieve that objective in a much more frugal manner, much more cost-effective manner, and much better manner. For example, the distance, telemedicine actually eliminates that distance concept. So ultimately these are tools. Technology is only an enabler which will actually make these things happen. And we should not lose sight of that. So that's one. Secondly, the digital systems in some sense must be inclusive. So while they are made for very educated people who can give consent on the devices, etc., they should also not leave out the people who are less literate, or who are old or infirm, or some kind of other challenges which they have. And the Ayushman Bharat health account, for example, is made on that premise that you have the concept of a consent, but you also have a concept of delegated consent, which means that if my father is old and he can't give the consent, you can always incorporate that I will be able to give consent on his behalf. And there is always break the ceiling, break the glass kind of thing, where in an emergency situation, you are, your physician or your doctor who is attending. So those systems are mimicking, in some sense, they are all those eventualities are taken care of while designing the system. But I completely endorse, and I am of a firm view that we should not, lose the sight of the final objective, and rather get into the means, whether, too much of overemphasis on certain things will actually kill the objective itself. That's so that we should not do. Right. On the reselling the consent part, the way it is designed is actually instantaneous consent. It's not as if you are giving consent for 2 years on so that somebody can just misuse it. When the data is being used at that point in time, your consent is taken. So that way, reselling, doesn't take place, because it's used for the purpose for which you have given consent and for no other purpose. For any other purpose in future, it will require separate kind of consent. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So, Rahul, do you want to just come in on that misuse of data, and also if you want to give some free legal advice to NIMHANS?
To NIMHANS.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, just so that we don't get me wrong, as a privacy lawyer, I can never say not to take care of privacy. So you must take care of your patient's privacy, and please do not do anything that violates your patient's privacy. But on the, and we can discuss it in more detail separately, or in Bangalore. But on the consent, and I'll just disagree slightly with you, Dr. Sharma, because I think this is the fundamental problem. Everything that we've discussed, assisted consent, etc., is individual. So you are concerned about the privacy misuse because you're using some other individual to help you get you onto the system. This is a problem, but it is not the problem we're worried about, because this is not a problem of scale. The problem of scale is when there is a privacy issue at scale. And that's why the misuse of consent, if I can flip it, is a problem. Which is that you've taken consent, got data, now that you've got the data, you use it for something else. That is a problem, and we have to worry about that problem. Let's be completely clear, this is a problem of the last 20, 30 years. GDPR was written to try and solve this problem, and they have failed. Why I think we have a unique opportunity to do this is because we are building digital systems. We've got this anonymizer model, which is built into the system. There are new technologies that people are thinking of that I don't think we've got in the National Health Authority, but things like confidential compute facilities, where when you get consent, get data with consent, you can put it into these trusted execution environments, and those trusted execution environments have computational guarantees that it will not be used for anything other than what it was intended to. So where we have got laws and the laws have failed, I believe we need to start exercising our engineering ability to build engineering solutions that reflect the objective of the law in a way that ensures that these objectives are received. And you asked me a question right at the beginning that I remember I have not yet answered, which is lawyers and technologists don't talk together, and I'm going to bring it into this answer. Lawyers and technologists don't talk to each other. And in fact, technologists and doctors don't talk to each other. And all these ecosystems that we are building, the fact that we've built it is a miracle. But what we need to do is do more of these, where we get doctors, lawyers, engineers at the same table, and build solutions that achieve all of these objectives. And in that, the lawyers have got to give up some clauses because the technology will incorporate the clauses. We don't have to write the clauses if it works in technology. And then the technologists need to say that, look, this technology that we're building is not what the doctor wants. The doctor, quite frankly, doesn't want what Epic is doing, because Epic was built for the insurance companies and for the lawyers, because they wanted to avoid liability. What the doctors want is information that they can use to provide health results. And so we all have to get together and build solutions that work for that objective, as opposed to all of us, as a lawyer, I get something saying, now write a privacy policy. I hate doing that. I like sitting with the engineers and saying, you do something in the technology, and I won't write it in the code because I'm sure the technology will do it. We've got to build systems like this.
I think that's a great note to end this on, because as a lawyer, I was going to answer that question that was asked, saying that are there any consequences to selling of data without consent? And currently the answer is no. There aren't any consequences, unfortunately. But that's exactly why conferences like these are necessary, to bring people from diverse walks of life onto one platform. I know there were a few other questions, but I'm really sorry. We have just been told that we are out of time, but hopefully at on the sidelines of it, we'll be able to get those questions in. So I'd just like to say thank you very much to the NHA, to the chair, the co-chair, and the panelists for a wonderful session, and particularly the audience for staying so late on a Sunday evening. Thank you very much for your time. I hand it back to the chair and the NHA.
Yeah, thank you all. And at the end of the day, it's not either security or privacy. Both are important in their own way, depending on the use case and scenario. And also, one common thing is that the ultimate goal is to benefit the people, and how to create that kind of a legal environment that has enough deterrence, but generic enough, and it's not tying our hands and legs to such an extent that you can't innovate or you can't provide the service the way you want to. So I hope that we are proceeding in that direction in this country, and thank you all for your time, and all the panelists.
Thank you, sir, for such a great session. But NHA is actually recognizing the states which have performed very well in last 50 days, starting from 1/8/2022 to 19/9/2022. So here are awards for top performing state based on number of health records linked to ABHA in the state in UT in these 50 days. I would request Mr. Shabir Hussain to come forward to receive the award on behalf of Ladakh. I request Satyanarayan sir to kindly give away the award, please. Mr. Shabbir Hussain, can we have you on the stage, please? Okay, I think he's on behalf of PMJ, so maybe he's in the other session. I'll just request the next from Chandigarh, Dr. Manvinder Singh. Shri Anil Kumar, Principal Secretary from Karnataka. Abdm has also recognized the districts which have performed very well in this 50 days period. I would request Shri G.S. Naveen Kumar, Special Secretary Health, Government of Andhra Pradesh, to collect the award on behalf of District Elluri Sitaram Raju and Bapatala. I request R.S. Sharma sir also to please join on the rise. Thank you so much, sir. I would request R.S. Sharma sir to kindly felicitate our panelists. Thank you so much, sir, for chairing the wonderful session. Thank you so much, sir, and thank you so much, Arogya, for moderating the session so wonderfully. Thank you so much, and we'll see you tomorrow again. Thank you.